We begin with 51 votes. That is all President Trump needs to confirm a replacement on the Supreme Court for retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy and solidify a conservative majority. But Democrats, they are gearing up for a battle to make sure a vote does not happen until after November's midterms. I have an incredible team here to break all of this down. It's a historic decision that will impact Americans for generations. I want to get you caught up on where the stakes stand this morning. After 30 years on the high court, Justice Kennedy announced Wednesday his retirement would take effect July 31st, preparing the way for the most significant change in the court's makeup in half a century. His retirement means the court will lose the swing vote, which played the deciding factor in cases dealing with freedom of speech and privacy, as well as LGBT and women's rights. Now, the ball is in President Trump's court. He says the search for the next Supreme Court justice will begin immediately. He already has a list of 25 potential nominees to replace Kennedy and has indicated he has narrowed that down to 4 or 5 favorites. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says once the president selects a nominee, it is full steam ahead.
We will vote to confirm Justice Kennedy's successor this fall. It's imperative that the president's nominee be considered fairly and not subjected to personal attacks.
You can call Republicans hypocrites. You can protest outside Mitch McConnell's house all day. Right now, he's got a winning hand. The Senate Majority Leader, he is calling for fairness. But let's remember, it was Leader McConnell who denied President Obama's Supreme Court pick of Merrick Garland back in 2016, saying the Senate should not confirm anyone to the Supreme Court during an election year. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was quick to call out McConnell.
Millions of people are just months away from determining the senators who should vote to confirm or reject the president's nominee, and their voices deserve to be heard now, as Leader McConnell thought they should deserve to be heard then. Anything but that would be the absolute height of hypocrisy.
Okay, does that matter? I want to go live to the White House where NBC's Hans Nichols stands by. Hans, you could call Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump a hoax, a fraud, a huckster, and a hypocrite. But that doesn't matter. They've got the upper hand here. And as I mentioned a moment ago, they're going to roll full steam ahead.
You know, they have a strategic advantage. They have tactical advantage, Stephanie. And when you look at what President Trump is talking about, one of his main criteria appears to be youth. Now, last night, speaking at that raucous rally, it was clear that the president is relishing his opportunity.
We have a pick to come up. We have to pick a great one. We have to pick one that's going to be there for 40 years, 45 years. Justice Kennedy's retirement makes the issue of Senate control one of the vital issues of our time, the most important thing we can do.
40, 45 years, Stephanie, that means you are looking at a nominee in their mid to early 40s, whoever he or she is. They are clearly looking for longevity, something to really put the president's mark on this court. I think when you look at the last nomination, the nomination of Neil Gorsuch, even Democrats will concede that for a chaotic White House, that was rolled out fairly expertly. They didn't make a lot of silly mistakes like they have in the rollouts of some of the other president's priorities. So we'll see how tactically successful this rollout is and just what they do to make sure that they keep those two Republican pro-choice senators on board, Senator Snowe and Senator Murkowski, and what those Democrats do that are up for re-election in states that Donald Trump carried. There are over 10 of them. I mean, what does Claire McCaskill do? You have a 57%. That's what Trump got in her state. She's up for re-election. We know what the three Democrats did on Gorsuch, Heitkamp, Manchin, and then also Joe Donnelly. The math on this, the nose counting, I suspect, has already begun, and now they're working on the rollout. Stephanie?
Tactically, that's what matters. You could say Mitch McConnell is not interesting at cocktail parties. You don't want to get caught in an elevator with him, but he is a masterful tactician, and that is what matters here. I want to bring my panel in. Ilyse Hogue, she is president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, NARAL. She is the CEO of Pro-Choice America. Jennifer Rubin, a Washington Post opinion writer. Jason Johnson, an MSNBC political contributor and politics editor at TheRoot.com. And my friend Midwin Charles, an attorney from the law firm Midwin Charles Associates. Jason, I got to go to you because I saw a tweet that you sent out that stuck with me. You wrote, Relax, folks. Kennedy was a swing justice who was mostly voting conservative anyway. This is a wash. Get your passport ready for when Ginsburg is replaced. By the way, this is partially Obama's fault. Talk to me about that. Is that Obama's sort of analysis paralysis?
Exactly. I got a little blowback for this, but if you remember back in February, Obama had the opportunity to appoint someone to the court. He could have made a recess appointment. And that was key, especially because basically Mitch McConnell had said, we're not going to vote on anyone you pick. So we will leave an entire branch of the government completely ineffective for a year just to spite you until the election. Obama could have put someone on the court who would have been able to be there until the end of the year, regardless of who got elected. And here's why that matters. You had crucial rulings on DACA and union dues that were 4-4 splits in 2016. And had he put someone on the court, those would have been ruled in favor of the liberals, and they would have been saved now.
And why didn't he? Because like President Trump or not, those who support him and, you know, don't like him as a person, but support him say he gets stuff done. And when it comes to judges, he does.
Yes, and he's put in all the judges that Obama got denied during his 8 years in office because Obama was a nice guy, and he kept thinking that people were going to play fair instead of playing to win. That's the problem. When you're in politics, you have to play to win. You got to be Axe, you got to be Taylor, you got to be somebody who's like, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to win and not try and play the other side. That was his mistake.
Nice guys finish last. All right, Jennifer, Majority Leader McConnell says the nomination process, I mentioned it before, is going to go forward full steam ahead. Walk us through the key Republican senators that could play a factor here. And I'm thinking Jeff Flake of Arizona, who has already said he wanted to hold up federal judge appointments until we make some progress here on what President Trump is trying to do on tariffs.
I think what people have to understand is this matters hugely, because what we are really talking about is the ability to criminalize abortion and other reproductive rights. That was the fifth vote that Justice Kennedy essentially maintained for his many, many years on the court, whatever else you will say about him. Every one of those people on Donald Trump's list will be anxious to repeal any notion of a constitutional right to privacy. They consider it to be a judicial monstrosity. So with that in mind, I think Senators Collins, Senators Murkowski have to understand that a vote for any of these people on that list is a vote to criminalize abortion and potentially criminalize birth control. It's that important. As far as others who might be susceptible, yes, it might be Senator Flake, but frankly, you have a lot of senators in Western states which are more or less libertarian states. You have a slew of House seats in blue states where abortion rights are taken for granted. And that, I think, is where the battle is going to be had. That's where the pressure is going to be coming to bear on all of these people, whether you're in a blue state like a congressman from New Jersey who might be at risk now because there's a real risk of Roe v. Wade. And what are these people going to say about what happens the day after? Are these people going to go on record and promise that they will statutorily defend Roe v. Wade and contraceptive rights if Roe is stricken down? If they don't, they are toast in those states. So it matters not only in Senate races, but in House races, because the House would be in a position then to set up any legislative protection for those rights. This is going to be a nationwide firestorm. And Republicans for years have enjoyed the ability to rail at the court, to promise that one day they would repeal it. Now they are faced with a reality. And that reality, frankly, is going to be enormous, is going to be a firestorm.
Okay, then Ilyse, if Kennedy's retirement could open the door for a new attack on legal abortion, walk me through what cases are going through the states right now that could end up in front of a solid 5-4 conservative Supreme Court.
Well, all due respect to Jason, we're not relaxed. We're actually pretty energized. I think this is the fight that 5 million women marched in the streets for on January 21st, 2017, because we actually know what's at stake. And we know what's at stake because many states have become increasingly hostile towards abortion rights, reproductive health care in general, and we know what the consequences are. We've had go to jail in Tennessee and Pennsylvania for what were considered illegal abortions already. And this is not your anti-choice movement of the 60s and early 70s. We have people openly calling for capital punishment for women who seek abortions. We've got a lot of anxiety, but we've got even more energy. There are courts already wending their way, there are cases already wending their way through the courts that could hit as soon as October, certainly into 2019, including the Iowa ban of abortion at 6 weeks, including bans of entire procedures of how women have abortions, interfering in an unprecedented way for the first time in how doctors actually do their jobs. All of these would render abortion effectively inaccessible across the nation.
I want to choose my words carefully. It was President Trump who, in an interview with Chris Matthews, did say that women should be punished. Right. So as reprehensible as we could think this is, President Trump was elected to be the president of the United States. And conservatives, if there's one thing they're thrilled about, it's all of the conservative judges he has put on the bench. And this is another example of it. So besides saying this is reprehensible, this isn't what America wants, America did vote for the president. I realize not in the popular vote.
Right. But Jennifer's absolutely right that the reason people voted for the president, or at least the reason people are voting for their House members and their Senate members, are actually not about abortion access. 7 in 10 Americans support legal access to abortion, even more contraception. I think it is a well-worn story that Jennifer has told more than once about the capture of the Republican Party by an extreme right wing. And I think what this is doing is forcing the stakes, forcing the morality, forcing the consciousness of criminalizing abortion and punishing women in front of everyday conservatives, moderates who have continued to vote Republican. But you saw 2 extremely high-profile Republican women publicly leave the party in the pages of the New York Times this week. The defections will be monumental. And look, there's no question a bad pick for the Supreme Court will hurt us for generations. But this party, which resembles nothing like it did when I was growing up, will be gutted for generations to come.
Defections could be monumental, but the people who are defecting aren't those who have to confirm a Supreme Court justice.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, when you look at the immense power that the Supreme Court has in determining civil rights, all kinds of things, and also, you know, whether or not corporations have the right to make decisions that harm their consumers, as we saw just this past week with the treatment of unions, it is quite devastating. And I have to also, it's very important to point out that abortion is not the only issue that conservatives are itching to dismantle. Yes. There is also affirmative action. I mean, I'm admitted to practice in the Supreme Court and have been for 12 years. I couldn't have achieved that without affirmative action. They are itching to dismantle affirmative action. And also, one of the things that I think Justice Kennedy was crucial in his vote, which is recognizing the right of LGBTQ people to be married. And that, too, is something that they are itching and railing to get rid of. So there are a whole host of issues. And so if you are LGBTQ, if you are a person of color, if you are a woman, so basically, if you are not a straight white male in America right now, you are probably freaking out.
All of these things were in danger the moment Gorsuch got on.
That's right.
I mean, that was their plan, even before Kennedy. And that was kind of my point. The moment Gorsuch got on this court, they were going to go after abortion. And I know people don't want to hear this, but it's been repeated all the time. Donald Trump, like you said, he's like, look, I think women should be punished for this. And 53% of white women in America voted for the guy. Exactly. And they heard him say that. Right. So clearly there's a lot of people in this country, and maybe it's just like what's happening at the border and other issues. Maybe they believe, maybe they didn't. But that's what the man said. Objects are closer than they appear. It's right here, right now. This is what's about to happen. And it may be unfortunate, but that's what people voted for.
And you saw unprecedented energy actually around Gorsuch. When we walked into that fight, as the lead-in said, McConnell thought he had that in the bag. He thought he was going to get it 75-25. There was unprecedented energy from progressives to block that, and that was actually practice for this one. You're right. This has been happening for a long time. People are waking up, just like they are at the border, just like they did in Iowa when an abortion ban that they never could have imagined passed. That's why we saw such high turnout in those primaries. I'm going to Iowa tonight. I'm telling you, I'm all over the country. The energy is phenomenal. It is a tipping point, and what matters is what comes next, not what came before.
Jennifer, what does this mean for President Trump? We know he has a history, whether we're talking about James Comey, are you on my team, are you my guy, or the disdain he has for Jeff Sessions, who hasn't displayed undying loyalty to the president. Is the president going to assume that this Supreme Court pick will be in his pocket? We cannot forget, while this is a massive win for the president and Republicans, here's what's still looming. Robert Mueller has an investigation going on. President Trump's fixer and personal attorney has thousands of documents under review. His campaign manager is currently in jail before he's tried over cases that could have him in prison for over 200 years. What could President Trump's expectations be of the Supreme Court justice, and can they actually impact the quagmire that he's in?
It's a very interesting issue. These judges who are on that list are, for the most part, appellate court judges who have some institutional sense that the court has to be the ultimate check on the two political branches. So now you're looking to those people and saying, would a Brett Kavanaugh, for example, who's an appellate judge on the district court, the most important court circuit in the country, actually say to President Trump, no, you have to respond to a subpoena from the special prosecutor. Nope, you can't pardon yourself. Nope, you can't avoid any other sanction of law for obstruction of justice, just like any other citizen. So this issue of whether these people will be willing to step away from a highly partisan role in support of the president towards one in which they ultimately are going to either take him down or make his life miserable is going to be one of the key questions. And I think that sense of judicial independence is going to be very hard to sniff them out. But that's one of the things that the senators, I think, are going to have to double down on and to really examine what their view of presidential power really is. Because the worst thing in the world, the worst constitutional crisis we could have would be Donald Trump denying the normal operation of justice with regard to the presidency, pardoning himself, pardoning everyone else, refusing to respond to a subpoena, and then have a Supreme Court that upholds him. Then we have our constitutional crisis. Then the republic is really at risk.
I don't know. The president seems to be A-OK with doing and saying things that are outrageous. Mitch McConnell is happy to be called a hypocrite because he's getting his people in those seats. Thank you all. Really good conversation. Up next, we've already seen the effect